What if I told you that the worst thing that ever happened to me at a family wedding was also the best? That being humiliated in front of everyone I loved actually set me free? Today, I'm sharing the story of how my father's wedding became the moment I finally stopped trying to earn love from people who were never going to give it. And trust me, this story has a twist you won't see coming. Let me paint you a picture of my relationship with my dad. Growing up, I was the classic overachiever, straight A's. Ambitious. Everything you'd want in a daughter. But somewhere along the way, I realized something heartbreaking. I could never quite measure up to his expectations. When people would ask my dad about my stepbrother Ethan, he'd light up like a Christmas tree. "Oh, Ethan's killing it in business," he'd say, his chest puffing with pride. "Just closed another deal. Kids going places." But when they'd ask about me, there'd be this pause, this hesitation, then a polite smile, and she's doing her thing. That's it. She's doing her thing. Now you might be thinking maybe you're reading too much into it. And honestly, I spent years telling myself the same thing. But sometimes, the truth isn't hidden in what people say. It's crystal clear in what they don't say. The real divide started when I told my dad I wanted to become a nurse. Picture this. I'm 18, passionate about helping people, ready to dedicate my life to caring for others. I thought he'd be proud. Instead, he sighed like I'd just told him I was throwing my life away. "You're too smart for that," he said. "Long hours, terrible pay, you'll be exhausted all the time. Why would you choose the hardest path for the least reward?" I tried to explain that it wasn't about money for me, that I wanted to make a difference, to be there when people needed help most. His response? "You could help people as a doctor or a surgeon. Why choose the lowest option?" The lowest option. That's how he saw my calling, my passion, my future. Meanwhile, when Ethan decided to start a business boom, Dad was writing checks, making introductions, bragging to everyone about his entrepreneurial son. Ethan was building something. I was just working. From that point on, I was on my own. I worked my way through nursing school, pulled double shifts to cover rent, handled my own problems. And every family gathering, every phone call, I'd get these little digs. "Still working those crazy hours? Or hope you like working nights forever?" But here's the thing that really stings. When Dad needed medical help, guess who he called? When his blood pressure was acting up, when he was recovering from surgery, when he needed someone who actually knew what they were doing? Me, the daughter with the lowest option career. And every single time I helped him, he'd brush it off. "It's not like you're a real doctor," he'd say. Or, "You're making too big a deal out of this." I should have walked away then. But I kept thinking, he's still my dad. That has to mean something, right? Spoiler alert, it didn't. So we get to the wedding. Dad's marrying Linda, his girlfriend of 3 years. I'm genuinely happy for them. I bought a new dress, took time off work, showed up ready to celebrate. Then I saw the seating chart. Picture this scene with me. There's Dad and Linda at the head table, obviously. Ethan, his wife, his business partners, their closest friends, all positioned like the inner circle, the people who mattered most. And then there was my name. Table 14. Buried in the back with distant cousins I hadn't seen since childhood. People who probably wouldn't even recognize me. For a second, I thought it had to be a mistake. I scanned the list again, looking for my name somewhere else. Maybe there were 2 charts? Maybe I was reading it wrong? Nope. That's when Linda appeared beside me, wine glass in hand, wearing that syrupy, sweet smile that never reaches the eyes. "You know the type." "Well," she said, like she was explaining something obvious, we had to prioritize. Not sorry. We ran out of space at the main tables. Not hope you don't mind sitting with the extended family. Just, we had to prioritize. I looked at my dad, waiting for him to say something. Anything. To realize how this looked. To remember that I was his daughter, not some random +1. He was mid-conversation with someone else, barely paying attention. When he did glance over, it was with this casual indifference, like he hadn't even thought about the seating arrangement. Like it never crossed his mind that maybe his only daughter shouldn't be relegated to the furthest corner of the room. And that glance? That was the moment. Not Linda's comment, not the seating chart itself, but that look of complete indifference. Because to him, nothing was wrong. This was exactly where I belonged. I smoothed out my dress, took a slow, deep breath, and looked Linda right in the eye. "Thanks for making it so easy," I said. Then I turned around and walked out. No scene, no dramatic speech, no slamming doors. I just left, my heels clicking against the pavement as I walked to my car. And you know what surprised me the most? My hands weren't shaking. I'd always imagined this moment would destroy me, that I'd feel devastated or furious. Instead, I felt relief. For the first time in years, I didn't have to wonder if I was overreacting or being too sensitive. They had shown me exactly where I stood, and finally I believed them. I sat in my car for a few minutes, half expecting my phone to buzz. Maybe Dad realizing I was gone. Maybe someone asking what happened. Silence. They were inside, drinking and celebrating. No one had even noticed I was missing. That's when I actually laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was so perfectly predictable. I started the engine and drove away. And with every mile, I felt lighter, like I'd been carrying something impossibly heavy for years, and had finally put it down. I didn't hear from anyone that night. Not a single text. The next morning, though, the messages started trickling in. First, my Aunt Jan. "Hey, are you okay?" Then my cousin, "Did something happen?" "Saw you leave early." Finally, my dad, "We need to talk." Notice what's missing from that last one? No apology. No, "I'm sorry if you felt hurt." Just, "We need to talk," like I was the one who had done something wrong. I left him on read. For the next week, I waited for the guilt to hit. It never came. Instead, I felt this incredible lightness. I went to work, picked up extra shifts, had coffee with friends, normal things. But for the first time in years, I wasn't replaying old conversations in my head, wondering if I should have said something different. Then came the phone call that changed everything. My aunt called, "Your dad's in the hospital. Before you start feeling sorry for him, let me be clear, he was fine." But he had ignored his health issues for so long that what should have been manageable became a crisis. High blood pressure, medication complications, all things that could have been prevented with proper monitoring. The irony? Before our falling out, I was the one keeping track of his health. Checking his blood pressure, monitoring his medications, making sure he followed doctor's orders. All for free, because that's what family does, right? Now he was stuck hiring professional care. And guess what? That's expensive. The family pressure campaign started immediately. Linda called. I ignored her. Ethan called, ignored him too. Then Aunt John tried the guilt approach. "You know how your father is. He doesn't mean things the way they sound." "Oh, really?" I said. "Then tell me what he meant." Silence. Because she couldn't explain away years of dismissive comments and casual cruelty. Then came my dad's text. "I need to talk to you." Not, "I'm sorry." Not, "I messed up." Just, "I need." The entitlement was breathtaking. A week later, Linda tried one more manipulation. "I think we should put the past behind us. Your dad is struggling. This is a family matter." I almost choked on my coffee. "That's interesting," I said, "because a few weeks ago I was sitting at the cousins' table. So, which is it? Am I family, or am I someone you can ignore until you need something?" The silence on the other end told me everything I needed to know. You'd think that would be the end of it, right? Wrong. Linda actually showed up at my workplace. Picture this. I'm at the clinic, finishing paperwork after a long shift, when I hear that familiar voice at the front desk. I'm here to see my stepdaughter. It's urgent. The audacity was stunning. She tried to guilt me right there in front of my colleagues, talking about how Dad was getting worse, how they couldn't afford care, how I owed him. That last word, owed, that's when her mask slipped completely. You owe him, she hissed when she thought no one could hear. I pulled my hand free from her grip and said the truest thing I'd ever spoken. No, I don't. Against my better judgment, I agreed to have dinner with my dad. One last conversation. The whole thing was surreal. He ordered takeout he never cooked, and we sat at the same table where I'd helped him plan his medications countless times. How's work? He asked, like we were making small talk. You don't care about my job, Dad. That's not true. But we both knew it was. Finally, he got to the point, I need your help. There it was. Not I miss you or I'm sorry. Just, I need your help. When I called him out on it that he didn't want a daughter, he wanted a free nurse, he couldn't even deny it. He just sat there, unable to answer the simplest question. What do you actually want from me, Dad? That was the last time I saw him. 2 years passed. I heard through family that Dad's health continued to decline, that money was tight, that Linda was stressed. None of it was my problem anymore. Meanwhile, my life got immeasurably better. Without the constant stress of trying to earn approval from people who would never give it, I thrived. I traveled, saved money, built real relationships with people who valued me for who I was, not what I could do for them. Dad got exactly what he had chosen. A wife who only stuck around because she had nowhere else to go. A son too busy with his investments to return phone calls, and a pile of medical bills he couldn't afford. I found out later that he'd had to sell the house, the one he'd kept after the divorce, the one he and Linda had remodeled together. They moved to a small rental, and he'd been asking everyone in the family for money. The requests kept coming through intermediaries. Desperate attempts to get me back in the picture, not out of love, but out of necessity. I blocked every number. The final chapters of this story are probably the most telling. I ran into Ethan at a coffee shop months later. Designer suit, expensive watch, radiating the confidence that comes from never having to struggle for anything. Still doing the whole nurse thing? He asked with that condescending smile. Still avoiding Dad's calls? I replied. That wiped the smirk off his face. Here was this millionaire, this golden child who got everything handed to him, and he couldn't spare a dime to help the father who had given him everything. Dad eventually ended up in a nursing facility, not a good one, but the only place he could afford. Ethan wouldn't help, wouldn't even visit. A year later, I was in the break room at work when I saw Ethan on the business news, being interviewed about his latest successful venture, talking about expansion and investments, while his father sat alone in a rundown facility. That's when it hit me. I had won. Not in a petty, vengeful way, but in the most fundamental way possible. I had built a life that was truly mine, while Dad lived with the consequences of his choices. The final text came from my cousin. Dad passed away last night. Thought you should know. I stared at that message for a long time. I didn't cry. I didn't feel relief either. I just felt nothing. And that told me everything I needed to know about how completely I had healed from this relationship. Here's what I learned from all of this, and why I'm sharing this story with you. Sometimes the people who are supposed to love you unconditionally will show you exactly who you are to them. And sometimes, believing them is the kindest thing you can do for yourself. I spent years trying to earn love from someone who was never going to give it, trying to prove my worth to someone who had already decided I wasn't valuable. The wedding wasn't the beginning of my father's rejection. It was just the moment I finally stopped pretending it wasn't happening. Walking away from toxic family isn't easy. Society tells us that family is everything, that we should forgive and forget, that blood is thicker than water. But sometimes the family you choose treats you better than the family you're born into. And that's okay. It's more than okay, it's necessary. If someone in your life consistently makes you feel small, unworthy, or invisible, even if they're family, you have permission to walk away. You have permission to choose yourself. Because at the end of the day, the people who truly love you will never make you question whether you matter. Thanks for listening to my story. If it resonated with you, please share it with someone who might need to hear it. And remember, you are worthy of love, respect, and a seat at the main table, not table 14. What's your experience with difficult family relationships? Share your story in the comments below. This community is here to support each other. Don't forget to like this video if it helped you. Subscribe for more real talk content, and hit that notification bell so you never miss a story. Remember, you deserve better than crumbs of affection. You deserve the whole damn cake. See you in the next one.